T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Kush'S Korner here on the Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Tonight, I am joined once again by Terry Cullen of the Dragonwood Wildlife Conservancy. And tonight we are going to get into the first of a series of talks on reptile nutrition. The centerpiece of this discussion will be sodium and iodine in diets of reptiles. But as always, that will not be the only topic we cover. We're definitely going to discuss lots of things tonight. But before we get into the discussion, as always, USARC. So USARC is the organization that is fighting for our rights to keep our reptiles, to run our reptile businesses, and to live this lifestyle we love with our reptiles. Check out usarc.org for all of the relevant information about the organization. And if you are not already a member of USARC, please look into becoming a member. When new legislation hits on either a local or a national level, and USARC is involved, the number of members that they can present to any committees working on these bills truly is important to show the magnitude of the community in the country and truly how many people these bills affect. So if you are not already a member, please check out usarc.org for all of the relevant information. All right, here we are. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight here on the Trap Talk Reptile Network. If you are here on YouTube, please give us a subscribe, like, comment, share your favorite podcast. There is a new podcast here on the channel every single day of the week. So if you are a fan of reptile-related podcasts, you've come to the right place. We are on audio as well. So if you are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Buzzsprout, etc., subscribe and a 5-star review would be wonderful. The episodes that you guys see here on YouTube Live get dropped there as audio-only podcasts after the fact as well. So if you're like me and you're always on the go and like having a podcast in your ear to pass the time, check us out on the audio platforms. With all that said, without further ado, there's a lot to talk about tonight, so let's bring Terry onto the show. Good evening, Terry. How's it going?
Hey. Well, as we were starting to discuss a little bit before we came on the air, I do want to touch on a subject that affects all of us. And it is becoming increasingly problematic. Trolls. People who don't give a damn about other individuals, people who have no kindness left in their lives, and people who don't even have lives, which is why they hide behind fake names and fake IDs and you name it. They're hurting a lot of people. If you're one of these folks, do something constructive. Go find Mr. Putin and volunteer. I'm being serious. This is horrible what they do to other individuals. A good friend of mine who is a reconstructive surgeon basically had his reputation destroyed by some of these folks. No particular reason. They just thought it'd be funny. Well, it wasn't funny. He lost his insurance. He came damn close to losing his license because he fought back. And I know of 4 other people who I spoke to in this past week that have been the victims of these trolls. It's got to stop. And, if it means that we somehow figure a way to hunt them down, find out who they are, expose them, we'll do it. But I cannot tolerate this anymore. Kindness, gentleness, these things are good. Tearing other people to pieces, lying about them, making up stories, these things are very bad. And they should not be tolerated. So that's my bit of communique for the moment. But I just can't believe how stupid these individuals are.
Yeah, the
It-
internet has
yeah,
given voices to people who should never have had them to begin with. So,
mean-spirited, horrendous individuals. We're trying to do something constructive. And if you want to engage in a conversation or say, hey, I know this better than you do, well, that's fine. We're open to any sort of thing. But don't you dare come on with absolutely no knowledge of the subject, try to comport that you do have knowledge of the subject. And lots of people out there who are, especially people who are newbies, new to the idea of keeping reptiles or new to the idea of what reptiles and amphibians are or any animals. All you do is turn them off to what we work with, turn them off to what they had fallen in love with.
yeah.
It just is destructive on every level. Please don't do it.
Yeah, the
Have
amount of
some,
gatekeeping that happens within the, herpetocultural community is really pretty staggering if you take a second to actually kind of consider what all happens, and to think that all these people who are gatekeeping and talking down to people with good intentions who are coming in, that you were that person however many years ago. um I never understand how somebody could formulate that mentality.
well, it's gotten worse if that's even possible. It started
Yeah.
to get very bad around 2005, and it just steadily has gone worse and worse and worse. We don't need you. We don't want you. Maybe form your own club. Go play Russian roulette with something. That I'm sure Mr. Putin would like that. Little Rusky in there. But this is awful. Please don't do that. Have some mercy on the rest of the people out there. Let them enjoy their lives. Let them learn about things without it being warped and screwed up. With that said, as I had discussed with you a little earlier, I'm going to, each time we do a show, I'm going to do a little bit of herpetology. And tonight we're going to talk about the apparatus for venom and venomous snakes. We all know that there are glands in the snake's mouth that produce the venom, modified salivary glands. I'm sure almost everyone knows that.
Mhm.
But what is an opistoglyph? Or if we say that a snake is opistoglyphic. Okay, I can hear everybody cheering. That's a rear fang snake. Opistoglyphic is a rear fang snake. They are the ones with enlarged teeth at the rear of the maxilla, and they allow the snake to get a good chomp on something and chew to get the venom running up the indentations of the fangs that they have. Not all of the opistoglyphics have fangs that have grooves in them. Some do, some don't.
Okay.
Obviously, the ones with the grooves in have a little bit better chance of getting something envenomated. Okay, how about selenoglyphs? Those are the viperine snakes, the ones with large movable fangs that are hollow. The venom travels through just like a hypodermic needle. That's exactly what it works like. They put pressure on it voluntarily if they want. They can control the amount of venom that they put in something.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you want to be real nice to them, when they've got hold of your arm. We don't want that to happen to anyone.
No.
That's another thing we'll talk about at some point in time. Keeping venomous snakes is not for most people. Very few people who are qualified to do it, and very few people who do it in a way that is safe and consistent with good practice, good husbandry practice. Okay, proteoglyphs or proteoglyphic snakes. These are the cobras or related animals, such as the taipans, the kraits, and so on and so forth. And in the United States, of course, and New World, the coral snakes. They have fixed fangs. Most of the time, the fang is completely sealed around an opening. So again, it's very much like a oh man, I can't talk. Almost said hydraulic, but it's the wrong hydro. Okay, call in the trolls. They'll have fun with that one. Okay. They have hollow fangs for the most part. There are a few that the fang is not completely sealed, but they also happen to be some of the really intense guys, like the taipans and so on down the line, the death adders, so forth. As most people know, in Australia, the majority of the species of snakes are in fact venomous. That is the only place in the world that that applies. And if you want more information on it, go find a great book. There are a bunch of wonderful books on Australia and Australian herpetology. Find one, enjoy it, learn what you can. I always keep some index cards in the page that I'm working on or reading, where I can jot notes and shift them around any which way. It's very handy. I've got a young lady who just started working with me, and I was amazed that she had never seen anyone do that before. She thought it was wonderful that here's this new technique. I said, yeah, this is about as new as the Flintstones. Right? Good Lord. Okay, so take a look at these snakes. Take a look at the venom apparatus. It's remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable. You really got to wonder how some of this actually evolves. It's not an easy question to answer. Yeah. And it's certainly not explained by most of what we have as evolutionary theory these days. There's got to be a lot more to it. All right, we're going to talk a bit about hang on a second. Are you seeing something on the screen?
No.
I just started picking up. I guess it's gone.
I guess folks heard you.
Want to apologize because we've been having problems right beforehand, and I think it's solved now.
Yeah. If anything does come up, if anyone in the comments can chime in if audio or video isn't seeming good, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, please let us know, because we can only see so much here. Okay, we're going to talk about sodium. We're going to talk about iodine and lots of other good things.
Yes.
Most people don't think about sodium or iodine when they're feeding their reptiles. That's why many of them will go through slow inanition or slow starvation of these items and die at an early age or not breed properly or any number of other things. Iodine is amazingly important within the body of any animal, and there are ways of safely giving iodine to the animals. It's not that iodine is all that toxic, and if you're even reasonably careful with it, you're not going to hurt anything. But one of the best ways of providing iodine for herps is what's called Lugol's solution, L-U-G-O-L-S. Lugol's solution is an old-fashioned iodine remedy. It allows for easy absorption, and you can take a lot of Lugol's before it has toxic effects on you. So the way to avoid anything toxic is you take your time, use small amounts of it. For instance, with a 1 kilogram animal, you might want to give it a drop every month and a half or so. You also have to be careful because there's a standard Lugol solution and there are some other ones that are extra powerful. Stay with the standard one. A better way of providing iodine is kelp, and it's really safe.
Okay.
Virtually all of my animals, at least every month and a half, get some kelp. Kelp tablets are the easiest way to arrange that. Go for a quality kelp tablet. Nature's Plus, Solgar, one of those. And you can shave off an amount and put it under the skin of a rat if it's a snake. Put it in a salad if it's an iguanid. Powder it up a little bit. You can get kelp powder. and use it by moistening, for instance, a mealworm or something like that for any insectivores.
Okay.
Lots of ways to get it into the animals. Tortoises often will open their mouths for something that they know they really want, and at the same time, all you have to do is drop a tiny, use a pair of forceps and drop a tiny bit on their mouth, and then give them something they like, and they'll just take it right down. Crocodilians, easiest ones in the world. You tuck it under the skin of a rat or similar. They'll bump it right down, and it's not an exact science. I know that people will be sitting there taking careful notes and saying, "Wow, my God, is it 3.2 milligrams or 3.4?" It doesn't matter that much. Get a little bit in them. It's a micronutrient. There's a reason that we call it that, because we don't need that much. And kelp in various quantities is very safe. It really is. So that's probably the safest and easiest way. The Lugol's is for people who are really getting into supplementation and what they want to do. Things that have iodine in them. Kale is one of the things it does. Spinach has a lot of iodine in it.
Okay.
So these are natural. There are any number of natural things that we can use that do contain a fair bit of iodine.
If you don't mind, off real quick, Terry, I just have a question while we're here. Is there any usefulness of feeding something like kale or spinach to rodents or to insects prior to feeding the reptile that will also accomplish this goal?
Boy, that's a good question. Probably is the right answer, but what you have to do is you're going to have to take, let's say we're dealing with a mouse. You're going to have to take a mouse, feed it up with the appropriate leafy green or whatever you're giving them.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to sacrifice that animal and then get it checked at a lab. That's about the only way you're going to tell if these animals are absorbing enough to make a difference.
Fair enough.
Yeah. It's a lot safer just adding a little bit and shrugging and saying that's probably just fine. One of the things that we know happens in reptiles and happens in a lot of animals is they don't develop properly, especially their mental capacity does not develop properly if they don't have sufficient iodine.
Okay.
Now, there are other things that we know, but that's one of the biggies. I know that, for instance, olive pythons seem to require more iodine than most snakes do. I don't know why that is. Could be something in the environment where they're found, but if you don't give it to them, they end up as mentally retarded. So, and that doesn't mean they can't be getting it from another source, because most fish has a pretty good amount of iodine, especially if the saltwater fish. We're in our infancy when it comes to supplementing things and understanding how all of these micronutrients and nutrients work and how they work together. The synergy is just beyond complex. It's really remarkable. The best we can do is to try to provide a varied diet and a diet with good supplementation and take it from there. As I've said before on our shows, people don't understand that what seems to be aging in many reptiles is not aging at all. It's the slow loss of micronutrients, or slow inanition, as we call it. Can be corrected with a change in diet, with a change in supplementation. And in reptiles, not a lot happens quickly. They don't lose it quickly and they don't gain it back quickly.
Yeah.
So be patient and be persistent when it comes to that. Sodium, of course, is in many ways tied to iodine, and we'll talk about that at another point that starts to get very much past what the average person wants to listen to. But let's talk about the kidneys in reptiles. Kidneys have a very important part to play in reptiles. The kidneys in almost any reptile occupy between 10 and 14% of the total body weight. That's pretty big.
Yeah.
They're large kidneys, and their kidneys are relatively complex as well. There are a lot of other animals that have kidneys that are much simpler than the reptiles. When I was a little bitty boy, I wondered about that white stuff that would come out of the cloaca. And I knew it was a waste product, but I didn't know how it happened.
Mhm.
And it turns out that the kidneys in reptiles are busy separating the good from the bad, the waste products from the important stuff. And they're very conservative as far as liquid is concerned. They don't want to lose any more of the liquid than they absolutely have to.
Sure.
The kidneys producing the white stuff, that's actually uric acid, and it precipitates into a semi-solid once it gets into the cloaca. Some of it comes from the cloaca, some of it comes from elsewhere. The uric acid in a dehydrated snake becomes almost crunchy. And in certain species, it's certainly much denser than it is in other species.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a story here. One of the amazing things that I have witnessed about reptilian kidneys happened many, many years ago. I was at a friend's house. He lived on a lake in the Midwest, and the lake had very high banks. They were quite climbable, actually. And one day, my friend looked down and saw this big common snapping turtle out of the water. Most likely she was looking for a place to put her eggs.
Mhm.
Well, he went back in the house to get his camera, and by the time he came back out, he had a little trouble finding his camera. By the time he came back out, one of the neighbors had come with a spoonful of cyanide and dumped it in this animal's mouth.
Oh my God.
Now, this was enough cyanide to probably kill 100, 200 people. And the reason he did is to keep the neighborhood safe. How many times have we heard that before? It's the poor snapping turtle. Well, with that amount of cyanide, she just drooped down and stopped breathing. That was it. As far as where he got the cyanide and why he had it, he liked collecting insects and killing them, and he had a killing jar and kept a pretty good supply of cyanide at his house.
Okay, that's
Not terribly responsible way to go. But anyhow,
I think I'd look into moving if I knew my neighbor had that much cyanide in at any point in time.
Man, I don't know. I'm going to watch my words here. My friend called me to come and take a look at it, and you couldn't get within 5 feet of it without getting knocked over by the cyanide fumes.
Mhm.
And I said, there's nothing I can do. The amount of cyanide that was put in. So what I did was I rinsed the animal's mouth out because it was filled with this cyanide powder crystals, and I said, she'll go into her forever world, at least a little cleaner than they left her with the neighbor. And we didn't push her back in the water or anything. Something came up and we had to go up above. Came down the next day to push her back in the water, and she didn't seem to be in the same position as she had been the night before. And I'm thinking, boy, something's playing with her, messing with her, or trying to eat her.
Yeah.
And I decided to leave her there and then watch and see if anything came to try to feast on her, and nothing did. The next day, she moved a little bit more. And remember, this animal is not breathing, can't breathe. Breathing apparatus it's completely frozen. Looked like she moved again. After about 4 days, that animal slowly crawled back into the lake. I marked her. I purposely put a mark on her shell so that, I don't know, maybe so the gods would put her in the right place when she got to tortoise heaven or turtle heaven. But that animal, 5 years later, was still alive. Now, the reason that we postulate that that animal did not die, first of all, it was a snapping turtle, tough as anything in the planet. Second of all, they can go for long periods of time and create an oxygen debt, although this was really excessive. And next, they can take solids out of their bloodstream and excrete them. Where the animal's cloaca was, once she went back in the water, everything was dead. You could, I mean, the grass, the weeds, everything, and you could see an outline of the turtle, but it was intense where the cloaca was. So she was dumping this stuff out of her system. So that's my story for the night, but it was an amazing thing to see. And the dummy who did this said, well, maybe you should go to a laboratory and try and see how much they can take. You don't want to hear my response to that. So I was indelicate in my response. That's all I'll say. Perhaps suggesting that he take family members and use them instead. But anyway, that was almost miraculous. And it showed why these animals have survived in many instances, in many situations. I also found, and this is sort of related, I found baby snapping turtles in the back of a cement truck, had no way out. They were stuck in there. And they had to have, some of the shells were still in there. Why the female dumped her babies in there, I have no idea, but some of the shells were still in there, and you could guess at how long they'd been there. Probably 3-4 months they'd been in this thing. And God only knows they had to be eating something because they looked hale and hearty. Took them all out and found a nearby lake and another nearby stream and let them go. God, there's nothing else that would be. They also had no shelter from the sun. They were getting baked. They were getting, beat up by the weather. These poor little things. They are tough. They are tough little animals. Remarkable creatures. Okay, back to the kidneys and back to the sodium. The kidney's job is to separate out things that are coming through the bloodstream. Blood goes to the liver then delivers it to the kidneys, and the kidneys want to create a homeostasis in the body. They want to get the blood levels of everything back to where they should be and get rid of the stuff where there's too much of. Essentially, and this is a broad generalization, but essentially in reptiles, you've got two waste products. One of them is the uric acid and the other one's ammonia. And they do produce a lot of ammonia. Depending upon the species, some of it is just unbelievable. They are ammonia tolerant up to a certain point, which is why some of the people who are very poor husbandry folks still seem to keep their animals alive. They can, and believe me, I am not in any way saying this is a good thing. It's just a testament to how tough these animals are and that they are very ammonia resistant. Ammonia in these animals is often related to the amount of protein that they're getting. The other thing that happens is when they get dehydrated, the amount of ammonia tends to increase, which indirectly tells us they're probably breaking down parts of their body to create moisture. I'm not going to tell you that this has been proven, but it's often been suggested that most reptiles, especially snakes, are able to break down the protein and the fat. They oxidize them. They're oxidized together. And when that happens, moisture, as in H2O, is produced. Snakes that are dehydrated, and I've I've dealt with this a number of times where people bring out, I don't know what's wrong. You know, how much water has it got? Oh, I don't know. I didn't check. Well, they didn't check probably for the last 8 weeks. And, you know, these animals really have a problem. When it's really severe, there was a fellow who had, I think, 7 pythons, if I remember correctly. And he sold one to a friend of mine who was a reticulated python, about 12 feet long. And when you handled this animal, it just went crunch, 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 crunch.
Ugh.
It turned out this guy never watered them. So this poor animal built up a huge amount of uric acid in the body.
Oh my God.
Never gave him water. Never.
Wow.
His idea was, and by the way, he worked at a museum.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah. So-called professional. And it turned out the other snakes were the same way because someone ended up buying the rest of the snakes just to get them out of there. And boy, I'll tell you, those poor things, we eventually got them pretty well cleaned out, but it took a long time and a lot of medication to do
Yeah,
it.
I bet.
But again, sadly, their ability to endure things like this and still live really shown at that point. Okay, other stuff relating to the kidneys. The animals seem to be able to do something that is quite remarkable, and that is adjust how much of what they're taking in and out of there. Remarkably complex kidney has to be there in order to do that. Leave that for another time because we're going to get into all kinds of bioanatomy here.
Yeah.
It's beyond the scope of what we need to talk about or should be talking about. Sodium. Why do we need sodium? Oh, that was bad. Somebody trying to get me. Sodium is without a doubt one of the most important balancing minerals, as in sodium chloride, that we have in the body. Reptiles need a reasonable amount of it. And animals that live near the ocean or near salt lakes or salt licks, they're going to need more than the average.
Mhm.
Giving the animal too much, you got to do a lot of feeding before you have too much sodium in the animal.
Okay.
You should simply be conservative with it. As the old time people used to say, a pinch, half a pinch, quarter of a pinch. Use that as a guide. If you got bigger fingers than average, then not quite as much. But some of the herbs really require a lot of salt. Cyclura,
Yeah.
they have extremely active salt glands, and they're sneezing salt all the time. All Cyclura live on islands. The food that they eat is coated in salt. And if you don't believe that, go to anywhere on one of the smaller islands that they're found on and lick a leaf or something or a berry. Don't swallow the berry because a lot of them are poisonous. And you will find out that they are in fact coated with sodium. There's so much blow off. It's incredible. And these animals need that extra salt. They're designed to handle that. And those salt glands need to be working and pumping. People look at a big healthy rhino iguana and he's got white crusty stuff around his nares. Well, there you go, guys. Everything's working fine and he's healthy as a horse.
Yeah.
They get rid of anything that's extra. So the amount that you give them, I mean, you can give them potato chips and they'd be just fine. Better than we would. And it doesn't seem as though there's anything to do with heart function or anything else when they go a little hypersaline.
Okay.
I suggest that any animals that you have get a little bit of sodium here and there, sodium chloride. Don't use commercially produced salt because you're missing out on so many of the micronutrients. The two best ones to use are the the pink salt that comes from Nepal and Tibet, where you have anywhere from 68 to about 74 different micronutrients in there besides the sodium chloride.
Okay.
A great way to get some of those extra little bits and pieces that they need. The other one is the Gaelic salt, which is actually a wet salt. That is probably the best salt on the planet as far as having other items with it. They go 80 to 85%, or not percent, 80 to 85 varieties of minerals that are in that salt. So what do you do with it? Depends upon the animal, but most of the time you just add it, add it to the salad. If it's the Gaelic salt, crush it. If it's the Tibetan salt, you can buy it in a crushed fine situation, but don't give them big chunks of salt. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about small amounts, a little pinch here, a little pinch there. If they're herbivores, put it on their salad. If they're rodent eaters, for instance, wet a little place on the hindquarters and just sprinkle a tiny bit there. You'll never go wrong that way.
How frequently, like every couple of months, or how often for a season?
I tend to do it every 6 weeks to 8 weeks.
Okay.
That's what I do. If it's breeding season for something, I tend to just up it a little bitty bit.
Okay.
I might up the frequency just to maybe every 5 weeks or so, right before breeding, or while they're producing eggs.
Yeah.
Just I'm talking from personal experience here. I can't refer you to some sage study that's out there. We need to do so much more with regard to this. We really do. So the way we get around it is by providing this stuff, and whatever is extra is mostly excreted and gotten rid of.
Okay.
As long as we're not over.
Even for neonate snakes, do they not have an issue processing?
I don't start them until they're about 6 months old. I don't start supplementing them until they're about 6 months old. Okay. Let them live off of what mom gave them, and let them get a good foot on the ground, and then I start supplementing.
Okay, good.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. By the way, that's a great question.
That's what I'm here for.
I was wondering about that.
Especially this episode. Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah. Call in the trolls. Anyhow, turtles. If you look at the liquid that is in a turtle, and that's something that you might be interested in.
Oh, okay. Look down to respond to a message in the chat. Hopefully Terry shows back up here in a second. But yeah, I guess to answer it on live, if you just joined in, I mean, I think what Terry said was yes, the Tibetan Himalayan salt is the same. I guess, and then he said Tibetan Nepal is where it's primarily sourced from. Here we go.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
started to sound warbly again. I have no idea what.
I'm good at improvising in those moments.
Yeah, I saw those tap shoes.
Yes,
those are pretty stylish.
Yep. Okay. Well, hopefully this doesn't persist. I don't know about you guys. I personally love these topics. I know that this kind of conversation isn't for everybody, but I think for everyone who's here now, and honestly, this is probably the highest live viewership we've had so far with the Terry episode, but I love these conversations. All right. Putin is upset about what you said about him earlier. He's kicked you off twice now.
I think that's probably it.
Yeah.
Have you got me?
Yes. Sorry, Putin.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Wow. He's really got a bug up his butt.
Yeah. Seriously.
Okay. Back to salt and back to the animals.
Yes.
If anyone has a question about a particular animal that you think you're going to have a problem getting the salt into them, And again, it's just tiny, tiny amounts that you're giving them. Please call us, write to us, do something. I can suggest a lot of ways of making it happen. There are all sorts of things you can do. You can wet a swab, a Q-tip, and just touch it to some granulated salt. Again, one of the two types I suggested. Lift up the lip and just touch it. It's in the mouth. It's going to get into the system in no time at all, and it's fine. That's a very safe way to do it.
Okay.
You don't have the animal opening up its mouth all the way or anything. It's not necessary. You just lift up a lip and touch it in, let it hit the wet spot. You got it. There are lots of other tricks, and that's something I would like to talk about for just a moment. If you have got ideas, if you have tricks that you have used, for lack of a better word, I know people like to use the word hacks. That's a pretty brutal word. If you have any tricks that you have, or any techniques, share them with us.
Absolutely. So
that we can share them with other people, and we can try them and give an honest assessment of what they are. We need a great deal more of that going on. We need to have people cooperating with each other and saying, hey, I tried this, or, I used macadamia nuts, which, by the way, are quite good for some of the iguanids. Gives them some oil for breeding time. Let us know, and let us get into a discussion about it. We'll get you on the air. We can talk about things. This is where real knowledge comes from. Not somebody pontificating and saying they know it all and it's the only way you can do it. Hell, when it comes to putting the salt in, there's 100 ways you can do it.
Yeah.
And do it safely, depending upon the animal that you're working with.
Yeah.
And, including venomous animals. So one thing I will tell you is that heliderms will actually lap it up.
Oh, really?
For whatever reason, they seem to like salt. That doesn't mean you give them a lot. That just means that they will take it on their own in many cases.
Interesting.
If you put a dead mouse down and then put a dead mouse next to it and put a little salt solution on it and feed it to the heliderms, they're going to take the one with the salt on usually first.
Sure.
So interesting. Again, things that require a lot of work, and someday somebody is going to take that and run with it, and we'll find out more.
Hopefully.
So anyhow, what I was going to get into, and I think Pooty got the best of us here. Reptiles in general have about a 70% quotient of water in their bodies, which is more than we do, actually. That's surprising, but it's true. If we're talking about freshwater turtles, for instance, they have less in the body, but a greater need for it on a regular basis.
Interesting.
The saltwater turtles have about a 63% water to tissue ratio, and probably having to do with the saline.
Sure.
That's work that really needs to be done. We know that much, but we don't know a lot beyond that.
Yeah.
We need people to start doing some of that work, and especially from a conservation standpoint, with so many of the animals these days being endangered or at the very least threatened. We've got to learn more about them, and we've got to learn what we need to do to keep them on this earth and keep them reproducing and give them a place to live.
Yeah.
And as I have said way too many times, this is my quote, I will blame no one else for it, that education, not legislation, is the key to environmental success. Bottom line.
Yeah.
That's it. Don't make a bunch of new laws. We don't need them. We've got people so panicked making all these insane laws, all these petty little tyrants, one little town after another, banning this and banning that. It's utterly unnecessary. Let
Yeah.
us develop a set of programs where we can start teaching people in the schools and teaching them at events, which is what I do.
Mhm.
Teach them about these animals and teach them the truth, for God's sake. This is not Godzilla versus Kong and they're ripping apart the world. These are
Yeah.
animals. And the ultimate right of any animal should be the continued existence of its species. Amen. Don't tell me about putting panties on puppies. Animals do have rights, but they should be pragmatic. There are animals that we need to use for various reasons. That, it's part of what we are as human beings.
Sure.
I know I'll get all kinds of backslap on that one too, but I belong to the IUCN Crocodile Specialist Group, and one of the only reasons that at least 5 species of crocodiles are still surviving is because we have allowed people to use them to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Okay. Not overuse, but use them to a certain extent.
For sure.
And that has garnered a new respect for the people who do the conservation because they're involving local people.
Yeah.
They're more cooperative because no one is beating them on the head about you can't do this, you can't ever do that.
Yeah.
The moment you put a prohibition on something, you've created a criminal.
Absolutely.
They found that out in the 1920s, the hard way.
They haven't learned.
Yeah.
They have not learned
So-
yet.
And they really haven't learned yet. How far in are we? Is it
We're
time?
47 minutes. So
Okay.
15 more minutes until we're going to go to
Okay.
the break.
I didn't know if you needed to
All good.
say appropriate abolition to the sponsors. And by the way, folks, the sponsors really are a necessity. And you have to understand that those of us who do this on the internet, there are very few of us who make any money. And it does cost to do these. So it's a labor of love. It really is. And if you could hold out your hand and get everything I've ever been paid for doing podcasts, you would have an empty hand, unfortunately. Sadly, very sadly.
Yeah.
Okay. What we talked about before with the kidney acting as an organ of homeostasis, where it gets all the liquids and things back to their prime condition, where we have the right amount of salt, we have the right amount of other things, and they get pumped back into the body. It's a remarkable system. It really is. Our kidneys pale in comparison insofar as efficacy. Their kidneys really work, man. They're pushing stuff out like crazy and then putting it back in very carefully. You don't see any pythons running around with heart problems from high blood pressure. Although that's probably not a good thing to say because their blood systems are so different.
Yeah.
But their kidneys are really top notch. We would be in so much better condition. Kidney stones would be a thing of the past. Okay. What I would like to do at this point is see if anybody has any questions. Did anybody call in yet, or anybody?
Not yet, but if anybody does, if you are listening live in the comments, drop any questions. I think this might be a good time to just do a little bit of a recap of some of the actionable information. So from the supplementation of the kelp and of salt, if you could just for clarification one more time, the quantity and then the frequency for snakes,
the quantity is relatively ambiguous. Look at your animals, see how big it is. You don't give a 1 kilogram animal. I should probably stick with American here. A 2-pound animal, you don't give it the same amount that you would give to a 20-pound animal or a 500-pound animal.
Right.
If, for instance, when I'm dosing a large croc with vitamin C, they do require it, by the way. I may be taking 10 to 15 grams of vitamin C at a single administration to them. Again, depending upon what I'm trying to do or what I think I have to do with the animal. Before winter hits, I always up the vitamin C in the crocs. And if anybody has crocs and they want to ask that question, I'll give you dosages based on the animals. But when it comes to the salt and the iodine or kelp powder, I would hope that you used. Look at your animal. Think about how much would be okay for you to take and scale it down.
Yeah.
Or up if it's a really large animal. The only ones that get that big are the big snakes. And torts, you got to remember, have a shell. Turtles have a shell. People always say that you should allow, a certain fudge factor for that. It doesn't matter all that much, though. So if you got a 50-pound turtle and you think 20 pounds of that is shell, don't worry about it. You're probably not going to do any harm. This is not an antibiotic or something super toxic by any means.
Sure.
And I think Angus Bellairs was the guy who said this. I could be wrong. Angus was a very famous herpetologist and wrote some of the best books on herpetology and reptiles and reptile keeping. He was quite a technician. He knew his stuff. He did a 2-volume set, The Life of Reptiles. Just incredibly well done for the time. Some of the information is now dated, but other than genus names and things like that, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Most of what he's got in that book is really top-notch information.
Okay.
You find a set of those books, buy them. Grab them up right away. Of course, they haven't been printed in quite some time. What he said was that the salt was essentially, I'm paraphrasing, the salt was very forgiving, they found, when animals were consuming it. And they could take a fair bit of it or not a whole lot of it and still come out healthy. The Lugos solution that I suggested for iodine, that's with somebody who's getting very technical with this whole thing. It's quite safe when you use it in small amounts, and you just don't use it very often. Maybe once every 5 to 7 weeks. Okay. And let's take that same 2-pound animal. We could give that animal what amounts to half a drop mixed in with some food or on the fur of a rodent or what have you, and it should be fine.
So you said about every 5
we were always taught that iodine was poisonous. It was, the skull and crossbones on the label and so on. We have a very, very wide safety range for iodine in humans. We can take a lot of iodine before it actually hurts us. And I'm not telling anybody to try this, but let's just say when people have swallowed iodine that shouldn't have, most of them, a couple of days, they're just fine. So there's quite a tolerance for it.
So you said about every 5 to 7 weeks supplementation of the iodine?
That's what I do, yeah.
And then salt was every 6 to 8 or so?
Depends on the animal. If we're talking about anything from green iguanas to spiny tail iguanas to cyclura, you can give them quite a lot of salt before you have to ever think about worrying about it. They're just going to sneeze it out. They just get rid of it. It's just like American crocodiles, Crocodilus acutus. They sneeze out a lot of salt. They get rid of a lot of salt. They have the ability to do so. So they're pumping it out all the time because they spend a great deal of time in salt water. However, not all of them. That's an interesting thing. There are saltwater crocodiles and American crocodiles that live completely landlocked in fresh water, and they still live just fine.
Really? I did not know that about the acutus.
Yep. Yep.
Interesting.
Interesting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, very.
There are several populations. There's also a population of American crocodiles that lives in a hypersaline lake. The kind that practically burns your tongue if you get it in your mouth. How the hell they can even survive, I don't know. That's in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic.
Okay.
They've been in this Lake Enriquillo forever, and there was also talk of trying to put them in possibly a different subspecies or different species at one time. No one has paid attention to them. They really need to. I've been beating this drum forever. Can't seem to get anybody interested.
Weird.
But it's basically a salt lake.
Yeah.
And it is really stiff. It really is. It's remarkable. It shows you, again, the plasticity of these animals, and in this case, physiological plasticity. That's just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So beyond that, we talked about kelp and kelp powder. You can get it in two forms. Two of the companies that I suggested, Nature's Plus, Solgar, are two of the best.
Okay.
You can't go wrong with them. The company that's called Now, N-O-W, they're also quite good. The best kelp used to come from a small company that's now out of business. I can't think of the name, but man, they owned their own kelp field.
Really?
So you got kelp that had minimal toxicity from floating crud, and but unfortunately they went out of business. They were just a mom and pop operation. I used it for many years. So
then same frequency on the kelp powder of 5 to 7 weeks as the Lugos drops?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And then also just kind of like a pinch, kind of like the salt for like a snake?
Yeah, a tiny pinch, for most of them is enough. Again, you're using the pink salt, you're getting a lot of different things into them. And, you think about it, you're putting 75 different compounds in that animal.
Yeah.
Or it's not all compounds. Some of it are actual elements, but you understand what I'm saying.
Sure. Would you use these two supplements simultaneously or do it in different feedings?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Doesn't matter at all.
Okay.
Yeah. It's one of those shrug of the shoulders things. Everything's good.
Fair enough.
One other thing that you want to do is make sure that they've got sufficient water after you've given them that, because they do need the water to help process all of it.
Sure.
Make sure they got a nice big water dish, and if it's an animal that likes to soak, one of the monitors or snakes that likes to soak, make sure they got some good clean water. Same thing with your snakes.
Yeah.
And your torts and on down the line.
Cool. I want to just throw a couple more questions out before we hit the commercial break. But since we were talking about the kidneys earlier, is there anything else from just a practical husbandry standpoint that we as reptile keepers and particularly snake keepers can do to promote kidney health in our animals?
Most of that has to do with not using certain antibiotics.
Okay.
That is a program unto itself.
Sure.
I have to write that one up and make it a very careful program, because we're going to get all kinds of flack from some of the people who are the champions of veterinary medicine out there. Sure. And I'm not making fun of them by saying that. It's the same thing I was educated in. So,
yeah.
But the problem is, again, people get so didactic about that. They really do. It's only this way. It's only that way. It's only, you can't do that. This is just fine. The drug company said it was fine. It's not dangerous. Yeah. Over and over again, they've been proven wrong. And the one thing about medicine of any kind is you cannot be didactic. You've got to be flexible, and you've got to look at things from more than one aspect.
Yeah.
For years, they were using several antibiotics that were just death to reptile kidneys. The only reason that some of them survived is a testament to the fact that they are tough animals in many cases. Sure. And managed to heal up after what was done to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially some of the aminoglycoside antibiotics are just bad news. Sometimes you have to use them, but if you do, you want to make sure that the animal is really well hydrated. Really well hydrated. If you have a way to soak them, when you'd use it with a snake, for instance, you put the snake in a container, and the container is 5 inches of water, so the snake is in water at all times. Lots and lots of information about that stuff. It's out of the scope of what we're talking about tonight.
Sure.
But some of the older antibiotics, safer antibiotics, have not lost their efficacy with reptiles. As an example, the various natural penicillins, they're still really damn effective for many of the things that bother the critters. When you're talking about stomatitis, infectious stomatitis, commonly known as mouth rot in snakes, the thing that was suggested probably 55 years ago by an eminent herpetologist still is one of the best things there is. And again, we'll go into that at another sitting. And so much of this can be done by the average individual and done safely if they pay attention. It's getting to the point where people can't go to a vet very easily.
Yeah.
It's so expensive. It's so expensive. Then the animal doesn't get any treatment.
Yeah.
So telling people how to deal with certain things on their own is a service, and it's a correct service. It's what should be done for the sake of the animal and the owner.
Yeah.
If we can find inexpensive ways of dealing with it or simple ways of dealing with it, you're going to have a lot more animals that are getting good treatment.
Yeah, certainly.
Yep.
So one last question before our break. Have you read or heard much about the new complete reticulated python book that has come out, I think, within the last year or so?
I have it. I've looked at it quite a lot. So that's my answer to that. What's the next part of the question?
Or just what are your thoughts on the book, the new information presented?
I'm glad that it was done. One of the things that bothers me is the loss of the genus Python with regard to the retic. I know there are reasons why they changed it. I don't necessarily agree that those reasons were substantive enough to make it happen. We're seeing way too much of that nowadays. They're changing the name of an entire genus because, and this is not the case with the retic, but plenty of the others were done because some professor needed a job for his grad student and needed to publish something.
Yeah.
That's not a valid reason for changing the genus of an animal.
Right.
And the other side to that coin that you'll hear me scream, jump around, and yell about is relying on DNA for specification. That's absurd. We need to understand that at least 6, maybe 7, maybe 8 different things have to be taken into consideration when you're looking at an animal. And it's everything from osteology to ethology to where they are found physically, in other words, geographic situations. All these have to be taken into account. If the reason that they're not breeding is just a matter of behavior between two groups, that's enough to set them aside. Yes, we should look at that. But DNA, especially mitochondrial DNA, it can be a tool, but it's way overblown.
Yep.
And yes, I have some experience with that. I'm part of the crocodilian DNA group. We get into some roiling battles, I'll tell you.
I would assume so. All right, cool. Well, we're a little past that halfway point. I think now we're going to go to the commercial break. So Sit tight, everybody. We'll be back here in a couple minutes.
Thank
Sorry
you.
for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. One of the things I love about being a part of the reptile industry is all the learning, okay? Learning can be fun, and I can prove that to you. Thank you so much to today's sponsor, Gary Scavino over at gs.reptiles. I highly recommend you head over to his YouTube channel, follow all this man's content when it comes to learning about rare species of snakes you could be keeping in the hobby, and also just finding out how easy a lot of these rare species of snakes are to keep in general. So thank you so much, Gary Scavino of GS Reptiles. Again, head over to his YouTube channel. Also head over to his Instagram to be on top of all of his current work and be ready for a big year over at GS Reptiles. Thank you so much, Gary, for your ongoing support. I really appreciate it. Cheers. One of the biggest growths we have in the reptile industry today are the rare species of reptiles that aren't worked with. That's right. That's why I went ahead and partnered up again with Brian Susan over at SUNDOWN Reptiles. Brian works with species such as kahua geckos, gargoyle geckos, all species of tree monitors. He works with abronia and many other cool species geckos that you can check out all on his website. Head over to sundownreptiles.com, see what he has available. Brian's one of the best doing it in the reptile industry today. He's been on the show multiple times, so make sure you check out all of Brian Susan's episodes on Trap Talk Reptile Network. But more importantly, for the highest quality of captive bred reptiles, make sure you head over to sundownreptiles.com and make sure you give him a follow on Instagram. Thank you again, Brian Susan over at Sundown Reptiles. Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. When you think about building a good community and being a leader of that community, nobody comes to mind better than Mark Hager over at Texas Chondros. That's right. Make sure you head over to TX Chondros on Instagram and also head over to Mark's website, see what he has available green tree python wise, and be ready for quite the 2025 green tree python breeding season out of Mark Hager. He's a veteran in the green tree python game, one of the best and nicest breeders in the green tree python game. He's been putting on the whole state of Texas for as long as I've known him. So if you want to see all the amazing other chondro keepers out of the state of Texas, another good reason to go follow Mark Hager over at TX Chondros on Instagram. And again, head over to his website, texaschondros.com. You can find all the links in the description below. Thank you so much, Mark Hager, for supporting the trap. Cheers.
Alrighty, everybody, welcome back from commercial. Here we are. During the commercial, right prior to, we had another question come through, kind of a follow-up to one of the previous shows. So about berberine and wild indigo root. So the modes and frequency of fermentation, does that work similarly with those?
Oh boy. Talk about asking the questions that open Pandora's box. Boy. Wild indigo root, the extract of wild indigo, the standardized extract of wild indigo root is amazing. It truly is, but it's got to be synergistic with something else.
Okay.
There are triggers that are necessary to make it work and make it work properly, but it is probably the most powerful immuno enhancer and immunomodulator that there is.
Wow.
Berberine, every day you see a new article on what berberine does, and pretty soon I think it's going to be advertised for getting a nice finish on your car. Berberine is a remarkable compound, but we just don't know that much about it. We know a fair bit about the wild indigo root from Native Americans. They were the ones who used it, and they used it when things got bad. It was put together in a usually something where they boiled it down, or they added alcohol when alcohol was available to make a tincture.
Okay.
That's most of what I do these days with it, is use it in a tincture form, or a modified tincture, which is slightly different. I'm going to have to do a commercial here. The Dragonwood Conservancy is going to be putting out a fairly amazing nutraceutical drug. I can't use the word drug. Sorry. Cancel that. Nutraceutical compound.
Okay.
and it's very complex. It was invented by me and a friend of mine. He was an MD. He has passed on, and he was the victim of a terrible horse accident.
Sorry.
But he and I had a great deal in common. We had broad knowledge of a lot of different things. He was part Native American. He knew a lot about Native American medicine. I knew a lot more about some of the Eastern medicine, especially from India, and some of the African medicine that was out there. There was a lot known in Africa that seems to have been forgotten, by the way. Very sad. But this new compound is going to be in a liquid form. It can be used in a myriad of different situations because of the various things that are in it and the synergistic activity of the compounds in the preparation.
Okay.
Been working on this for a long time. It does contain wild indigo root and a whole bunch of other things. You'll see it when it comes out, but we will have that out shortly, and it will be something that is relatively pricey, all things considered, but it goes down to saving one animal will pay for it 10 times over.
Sure.
That's going to have to be a whole bunch of talks on that one.
Yeah.
And people chiming in. It's been used on humans for 27, 28 years, something like that.
Okay.
Tried and true, and the result of some great minds. How modest is that?
So, I mean, I guess to ask a couple questions. First of all, for anyone who's interested, where will it be available once the product hits the market?
I'm going to make sure that it shows up at the various events, and
Okay.
you can get it by mail from us at Dragonwood Conservancy.
Okay.
My gentleman who is helping formulate it, and he's the same person who was around when this was first produced. He's really looking forward to making this all happen. We've been talking about this for at least 10 years, maybe 15 years.
Wow.
We finally got it all underway and going. In humans, the only thing that I'm allowed to say by law is that it had an impact, a very significant impact in most instances in neoplasms. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
We have testimonials to that effect.
Okay.
I'm not telling you it is. I'm just saying that the testimonials that we've gotten have borne that out.
Very cool.
Yeah, many hundreds of people have taken it.
Okay.
We were testing it in Venezuela for a number of years, and that was going very well until the government changed. Now, it's a pretty sad place to go to. It used to be a very, very wonderful and interesting part of South America, and it's dangerous. It's really dangerous now.
That's what I've heard.
So anyhow, any other questions on it?
I guess then from a use in reptiles, is it more of a like a routine kind of thing to supplement with, or more of like a, use as necessary for aiding in illness or infection or whatever?
The answer to that is yes, yes, and yes.
Okay.
It can be used any which way. It has virtually no toxicity.
Wow.
That's a pretty heavy thing for something that is as active as it is.
Sure.
One of the processes that we used to put it together, we have guarded very, very jealously and very carefully. The Chinese have tried to duplicate it either 3 or 4 times, and they've not been able to do it, thank God. But we produced it in small batches, and as I said, it's been around now for maybe 28 years, 27 years, whatever it's been since we put it all together. Yeah. and we're looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Reptonic is what it's going to be called.
Okay.
Reptonic.
All right. I'm looking forward to it. Very much so. All right. So should we get back to our conversation from prior to break?
Yeah, let's. I'd feel really good about you hitting me with some more questions because I think you do a great job with that, and it's fun for me to be able to interact with you on that level.
Yeah.
As opposed to holding your hand when you go on the roller coaster.
Well, I
never
do
mind.
That,
I
but
love roller coasters. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Well, you can ride them for the both of us then. So.
Oh no! Don't tell me. A coaster phobe.
Yeah, I'd rather mess with venomous snakes or crocodiles than ride a roller coaster. So.
Oh boy. Are you an American kid or what?
Yeah, absolutely.
Then you should like roller coasters, damn it.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's jump a little bit.
Okay.
I'm sure most people know that you work with the amethystine pythons.
Yes, I hope so.
That's a big love of yours.
Yes,
and it seems like every couple of years we're finding a new subspecies.
Yeah.
How many subspecies do you currently have?
So as currently described, I have 4 of the 5 species.
Species or subspecies?
Well, as of now, there are no subspecies, probably dependent, I guess, on the current literature that is used.
Okay.
I don't agree with it personally, but going off of what is generally accepted as of now would just be 5 full species.
Okay. So you've got everything but king horneye. Am I correct on that?
I guess if you want to also consider iron range amethystina as well, I don't have those.
Okay. Yeah, I think they're sufficiently different to at least be a subspecies.
For sure.
One of my questions for you regarding the amethystines is cold tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
How far do you drop them before you're going to breed them?
So I really haven't gotten them below the upper 60s. Some of the males that are on the ground in the room probably hit 65 at the absolute coolest, but I really haven't gone anything further than that.
The Australian snakes, one of the things that I learned a million years ago was how cold tolerant most of them are.
Yeah.
And I'm not 100% sure because some of them live in absolutely equatorial conditions almost.
Right.
I've always been curious about the amethystines. Eric Worrell was the first guy to work seriously with them, really seriously. Are you familiar with Eric Worrell?
I've heard the name. I'm not too familiar with his depth of work, though.
You should have his book.
Okay.
You definitely should. He did a lot of the really seminal work with these animals.
Okay.
I would like to see some serious work done on systematics with the amethystine pythons, period. Some of the lessons I learned when I got some of the animals out of Australia many years ago, like 1966, 1967, was that if they don't get if they don't get a good cold snap, you'll never breed them.
Yeah.
And that was unusual because with let's just take the boas, for instance, the happy little boa constrictor. Yes, it will help trigger the males and even the females to a certain extent, but you don't need to drop them.
Yeah.
So there's still a very good chance they'll breed and breed successfully without that.
Mm-hmm.
And no one is taking notes about this stuff, at least no one. I would really like to see some work done on the temperature adjustments and things like that prior to breeding, and see what's actually necessary and what's not necessary, what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And as I'm so fond of saying, there's always, or almost always, another right way to do things.
For sure.
Because I think we could be producing more animals, healthier animals, using a composite. And that's where we've got to get together on this stuff. People have to start working with each other. If you really love these animals, then don't hide in a corner and say, I've got the magic balm, but you aren't going to get it. Share with other people. And don't lie about it. If you don't know, you don't know. If you've had good luck every time you put on a Hawaiian shirt, then by God, use your Hawaiian shirt. But those are the things that we need to do so much more of. I also want to see a lot more kids learning about reptiles in a constructive way. Not somebody hands them a ball python and then they get 50 morphs and they still don't know anything about ball pythons.
Yeah.
I would like to see someone put together a fairly professional group for the kids, mentoring group for the kids, or, or for adults as well, but at least for the kids. I know I've beaten the drum about this for a very long time, and I just don't see it happening. The museums used to be part of that. The people from the museums used to be part of that.
Yeah.
Now the people at the museums, the few that are still left, they're either too old or have no interest in doing it. That's got to be remedied. We need enthusiasm. We need to be able to look at these animals and see what I saw for many years before I had a lot of information. They were animals that were incredible. They were animals that did things that other animals didn't do. They were remarkably beautiful. They were remarkably this. They were remarkably that. Get something that's awe-inspiring going in your head about these animals. Learn new things about them. Get determined that you're going to find out the answer to some of the questions that are out there. Go for it. Go get it. If you need to go to a particular school, get in touch with me. I'll try to give you my view of that school. There are still some reasonably good herp departments, but nowhere near as many as there used to be.
Sure.
Same thing with people who want to become so-called zoo professionals. I don't know that there is anywhere for you to go anymore. The AZA has choked the situation so badly. That as we are fond of saying about their programs for animals that are critically in danger, they're just recipes for captive extinction. And a lot of back patting and mutual admiration.
Sure.
I'll leave it at that. And I will not apologize for ever saying that, because although there are some truly great people in the AZA, I'm going to say that that's really a minimal part of it. The zoos have lost their relevance in so many ways, and we need those zoos. We desperately need good zoos. We desperately need young people who will get in there and look at things and say, how does that happen? Why is this going on?
Yeah.
Get yourself to be the little inquisitor. We need you badly.
Yeah.
Come talk to me. Okay. So I've gotten crazy enough here for you.
No worries.
I would like to know of a single question that you have about something that you've always wondered about. I don't care which animal it is. Throw it out. Let's see what we have to say. And this is something I've always wanted to do with you, but never brought it up to you, never talked to you about it.
Wow. That's really hitting me on the spot. We might have a little bit of dead air for a second while I
That's
think
okay.
about it.
I'll take a swig of my Diet Pepsi here.
Yeah, I'm not
that Pepsi. We could use some money.
Man, about any Hmm.
Mhm.
That is a wonderful question. Um, you have me stumped here as far as what to say.
Anybody out there want to send us one
Yeah,
while he's thinking?
someone help me out in my time of need.
And your daughter? Oh, wait, you're not that old.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's pretty loaded as far, you could take that into so many different directions. And um
I know. That's why
I
I
feel like,
asked it.
yeah, and I feel like a lot of us, especially if we work with these animals on a day-to-day basis, it can be easy to not think of those outside the box questions if you're just in the routine of care and breeding and all that stuff.
But those are the questions that are meaningful.
Yeah,
They're really meaningful.
absolutely.
What don't you know about Bowen's pythons, as an example?
Yes. I mean, quite a bit, obviously. So I mean, I guess the one question that comes to mind immediately on Bowen's pythons that has kind of always been a bit of a question that has stumped people. That what seems to be the thing that is missed in captive breeding when it comes to the ovulation of Bowen's pythons. It seems that a lot of people can get follicular development, can get copulations and whatnot, and then ovulation is where most people fail in the process.
Yep. That's why I brought it up. I thought it would be a good one to play with.
Thank you for the softball.
Yeah. And Bowen's pythons are very odd snakes. We need to study them far more thoroughly than we have. We've got to get on them and start doing the same thing to many, many, many other species. We also need to start breeding things that have not been popular.
Yeah.
And that's because we need to start making genetic banks for some of these animals that are becoming more and more scarce.
Yeah.
Get people interested in them. They might not be the prettiest as far as you think that, bright orange and bright yellow are the ways to go, but they can be incredibly fascinating.
Yeah.
If I say the words Mexican python, what am I talking about?
The Loxocemus.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce that? Yes.
Yeah, Loxocemus. Do you know how many changes in names have gone through those poor animals? They're remarkable creatures. We don't know what they are. Sometimes they're a boa, sometimes they're a python, sometimes they're neither. Sometimes they're a close relative of the sunbeam snakes. Nobody's ever worked on them long enough and seriously enough to come up with the right answers. And they're incredible little snakes. They're gorgeous little things. They're as mild-mannered as anything on the planet. They eat like champions. And if you give them really good amounts of food, by the way, one of the things that they do well with, and I've got to be careful telling people about this, having a little bit of clean baked potting soil. And by clean, I mean no additives whatsoever. Like Canadian black soil or something like that, where there's got nothing in there and no bug stuff, nothing. Just a little sprinkling of that on their food. It really seems to make a difference. And I love those little animals. They're wonderful. And we don't see them very often these days.
No, definitely not. I'm not sure I've ever seen one in person.
Yeah, I've got 3 pair of them. And I got babies from a couple of breeders in the Southwest, and then I got some animals legally out of Mexico.
Okay.
2 of them out of Mexico. So I've got some bloodlines that are diverse.
Wow.
But man, they're incredible little creatures. And they're never happier than when they're tearing the living bejesus out of their cages. They shred stuff and then they pile it up. It's like they have hands.
Interesting.
One day you put them in, and I use newspaper for a lot of stuff. It's, it's handy, it's clean, it's easy to use.
Yeah.
And hard to get these days. But they just, if you give them a clean cage, boy, they get busy right away. They're just tearing the thing up. And then they go over and they tend to get their faces wet in their water dish and go at it again because it's easier to rip the paper.
Yeah.
If that is a conscious thing that they do, it's absolutely remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. What amazing little creatures they are.
Yeah.
And they're a beautiful little snake as well. They really are. But let's find out what Loxoscemus really is.
Yeah. That'd be fascinating.
It would be wonderful to know where they came from.
Yeah.
What are they actually related to? And as I said, they've been bounced back and forth and up and down. And the next thing I'm going to hear is somebody talking about DNA, and I'm going to probably start spitting. We need some good systemicists to start breaking some of this stuff down and answering some of these questions.
Yeah.
These are things we need to know. Okay.
So we have a few questions in the chat that I will hit.
Oh, go for it, man.
Yes. So
we love you. And by the way, thank you everyone for listening.
Yes.
And watching. We really appreciate it. And it's good to be able to have folks who have an interest in things and a deep enough interest where they will listen to us jabbering on for an hour and a half or two. Thank you. Serious thank you to all of you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Scott asks, what can be done to improve the gap between conservation and herpetoculture?
Oh, man, that is a great question. Scott, whoever you are, I would talk to you off camera sometime. I'm serious. I don't do this lightly, but Stephen, if he gets in touch with you, give him my phone number.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then have him remind him when he calls, have him remind me of what. That is one of the most important things in the world that we've got to solve. And a lot could be done. And almost all of it has to do with targeted, palatable education.
Yeah.
People don't understand those words. The education can't just be some pansy wet standing there dribbling off about this, that, or the other thing, and he read a book on reptiles once upon a time. It's got to be good information. It's got to be people who are powerful speakers. It's got to be people who are not afraid to stand up to the status quo, because there are a lot of things that are going to have to change. I hate to sound like a certain president that we have now, but we need serious change in order to make this happen. And we need it to happen 25 years ago. We need to happen 70 years ago. We really did.
Yeah.
The zoos have hurt this so badly. The ridiculous rumors that go out there. People see me working an anaconda, which you've seen.
I have.
Probably a lot more than once. And they get the absolute wrong idea about what the animal is, what it could do, what it isn't going to do. The most dangerous thing is getting a hernia, picking it up. That's not to say that these animals are naturally tame. They are not. They don't like to be messed with. They don't like people. They're perfectly happy to exist in their environment. But the animals that we work with and the animals that we are doing research on, I want them to be habituated, so they're calm, so they actually enjoy being handled. They like to be out. They will come to me for things. And by the way, anybody who thinks that a snake can't hear, they don't hear very well, but they definitely can hear. Another story I'll tell one day about that. Scott, that is an excellent question. And if you have an interest in becoming part of that, I'm sort of recruiting some people right now to see who I can get and get them involved in doing this.
Yeah.
We need to go to these events. The NARBC, good people running it. We see a lot of good people there, but they're misdirected. It's all on, the same old story of 3 different morphs of this and 23 different morphs of that. That's not conservation. It's not even good for the animals. It's bad breeding.
For sure.
If you're talking about natural morphs, there are a few. I own some animals that have what you would call natural morphs. They're right out of the wild, unusual looking things, probably perfectly healthy, and probably will pass it on to their kids if they have any.
Yeah.
I would like to hear more from Scott. I would like to hear what else he has to say about that, because there are things we can do, but we need numbers in order to do it.
Yeah. Well, I guess to give Scott a bit of a testimonial, I mean, Scott and his wife, they're on the absolute cutting edge in Australia as far as herpetoculture goes, from writing countless books to the field work they do to the captive propagation education. They're really at the absolute top of the game over there in Australia. So definitely the kind of person who is perfect for to be on the right track with the rest of us.
Let him know that if that's the case, that he's in Australia. I'm usually up pretty late at night working, but I also am on WhatsApp.
Yeah,
and it's my same phone number for WhatsApp.
Got it.
So there may be a preface. I don't know if it's 011 or something that they have to dial, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, I will definitely.
They'll know that.
Yeah, I'll get you guys in touch, because that's definitely a connection that needs to
happen. Some of my best friends are in Australia, and some of the people I've always enjoyed working with are in Australia.
Yeah.
One of the people that I want to mention is Sally Isberg, Dr. Sally Isberg. I worked with her to get her going and help her out with what were very, very interesting ideas that she had about crocodilians. And she now runs an institute of her own. Great lady. She really is. And there are a number of other folks who have been good friends and still are, who live in Australia. Down Under is a hell of a place to go.
One of my main goals in the next few years is to try to make it over there for the first time. It's a part of the world that I absolutely need to experience. So
yeah. I'll tell you, the one place I've never been, one of the very few places on this planet that I've never visited, is New Guinea. And I've always wanted to go, and something always happened. Every time when I was all set to go there, something happened, some catastrophe. And I hope that it still exists when I finally do get a chance to get there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Amazing place. It's sublime.
Yeah, I hope to do the same as well. So next question we have in the chat, this is a little bit of a fun one. Your thoughts on scientists working with elephants and DNA of woolly mammoths to try to repopulate woolly mammoths?
Oh boy. Recreation, as we call it.
Yeah.
I don't have any particular negative feelings about it if it's done right.
Okay.
I think we can learn from it. Is it fair to the animals that we produce, if we ever are in a position to produce them? You start to get to ethics questions that are very difficult to answer. I will give you my personal view, which I rarely do. As you know, and you know me, I don't believe anything. I will have an enlightened viewpoint on things, but I don't believe things.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest problems that we have is that people believe stuff, and they believe themselves.
That's the biggest problem.
I don't care what your beliefs are. It doesn't matter to me. Mine aren't worth any more than yours. Beliefs are worth nothing.
Yeah.
We need data. We need information. We need long-term studies. And we need people with really open minds. And that's something we are really hurting for. Very, very few people with open minds in science.
Yeah.
Science, it's like it's gone back a century or two, or three. I would like to see work done with a number of species because I think we could learn a lot from that. Are we ever going to repopulate some of these animals? No, because we don't have the area to put them. One of the exceptions to that would certainly be the thylacine.
Yeah.
We could get pretty close to making a good thylacine. And as the director of the museum down there said, I don't care if there's a thylacine in every block, because somebody said, well, they're just going to turn them into pets. He said, at least they'd be there.
Yeah.
And viewing it that way, I tend to agree. There are still places where the thylacines could be, where they could live, where they could flourish. I don't have a problem with doing it with them. With some of the big stuff like the mammoths, there just isn't anywhere to put them.
Yeah.
You know, we've got nowhere to put the animals. There are other species that might be more appropriate, but we don't have the fossil remains for them, or the semi-fossil, or whatever we want to term it. That's a very complicated situation. One of the biggest problems is that we don't have the full genome on almost anything. And the RNA opens up a whole new world. And then beyond the RNA, it's suspected that there's another set of criteria, like DNA and RNA, only different.
Interesting.
That guide the hand that made them. So, yeah, another good question. Very, very good question. I wish we'd get more people throwing stuff at us like that, because that's how we learn. That's how other people learn.
Yeah,
and that's how we get into a position to discuss this stuff among each other.
Yes. If anyone else who's still here, which there's plenty of you, thank you guys for sticking around. If any more questions, please throw them in the chat. We do have another one here. So Lisa wants to know about the phenomena of snakes like ring pythons and white-lipped pythons throwing up fur balls, or pooping out the hair balls. What are your thoughts on it? And then are there other species that you have seen do this other than some of those Indonesian pythons?
Yeah, I have seen other species do it, and it's usually in animals that are in need of a couple of things, and one of those things is the lipids. That they're just not getting some of the lipids. Okay. The 3s, the 6s, and the 8s and 9s. I have cleaned up animals like that, if you want to use that term, by using lipids. And I'd like to do maybe a short bit on that at some point in time. So maybe remind me.
Sure.
The hairballs themselves are not terribly problematical, but they really shouldn't be regurging them.
Yeah.
And the ones that occur coming out the other end should be well embedded in fecal material, and they're not. And I know exactly what she's talking about.
Yeah.
And there are other snakes that I've seen that happen with, yes. Yeah. I would look at doing supplementation with the lipids and see what you get. You can't hurt the animals with it. Okay. So go ahead and give it a try. And if you want specific amounts or what have you, get in touch with Stephen. He'll get in touch with me.
Yes, absolutely.
Be more than happy to do that.
Cool. So I have a question that I've thought of since I really have been sitting on most of this conversation. It goes back to the first thing you discussed about the venomous snakes, and particularly with the rear-fanged venomous snakes. So I learned something new tonight, is that the fang structure on the rear-fanged venomous snakes is not mostly uniform across the board. That there are some with, as you said, like more serrated rear fangs and smoother rear fangs. What is, in your opinion, the reasoning for that? And then, like, what are some examples of some species that have both the serrated and then the smooth rear fangs?
I'm not going to give you an opinion, because I don't have an opinion, not one that's valid. what I will do is give you some postulation. The problem with evolutionary kinetics and evolutionary systematics is that we have all kinds of people making guesses about things. And they're probably wrong. One of the things that I've said for years is I would give anything to be able to go back and film dinosaurs, film extinct animals, and see how close we actually are to what we think they do and what we think they did and what they think, even what they look like.
Yeah.
Dinosaurs change shape about once every 5 years. Now lots of them are boasting feathers and so forth.
Yeah.
Human beings love to guess. They love to guess about things like that. All I can tell you is I have kept quite a number of rear-fanged snakes. I found out the hard way. The only time I was ever envenomated by anything was by a rear-fanged snake, and it was an accidental thing that happened because we didn't even know they were venomous. So I'm not going to go into which one that is because I'm just going to open up a real Pandora's with that. But I had gone out and caught a very rare, I was 17 years old, I think, a very rare rear fang. And I was unpacking them. I had just flown in, got them in a laundry tub that I used to wash all the animals in. And the phone rang, and the phone was posted right above these laundry tubs. I reached quickly for the phone, and I slipped on something on the floor. And I came down hard on the laundry tub and put my hand out, and it went down in the inside of the tub to just try and catch myself. And unfortunately, I pinned the snake down by doing that.
Oof.
And, scared the living hell out of the poor animal. And I don't think I actually hurt him, but I certainly scared him. And he turned around and grabbed my thumb. And next thing I know, he's chewing and it's burning. I'm thinking, what is going on here?
Yeah.
In the original description, they don't list this animal as being medically important. Turns out he was. So we'll just leave it at that. That's my story for the night on the rear fangs. But that's the only thing I've ever been envenomated by. I've been pretty damn careful, and I want to stay that way. If I had known the animal was venomous, I would have handled it completely differently.
Sure.
So it looked like a colubra to me.
Yeah.
So, just to try to get back to that question.
Yeah.
Now you sort of got me at a disadvantage here. I hate going out on a limb and making guesses about things.
Sure.
Let me try to answer that a different day.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that one is just, that puts me into the what if category far beyond what I like to be.
Sure. To me, it would make sense that from a functionality standpoint, serrated rear fangs would be much more effective from a delivery standpoint. Wouldn't you say?
You would think it could be, but by the same token, some of the rear fangs have pretty good grooves in their teeth.
Yeah.
And some of them have no grooves at all.
Yeah.
And some of them have serrations.
Yeah.
It's whatever worked for that one.
Yeah. Fair enough.
We'd have to look at the diets as well to try to, infer from that, but that gets dangerous too.
Yeah. Well, then what are just a couple examples? Just honestly, I'm just curious of species of rear fang snakes with these different fang types. Like for instance, like with the mangrove snakes, what kind of fang type do they have?
Boy, they've got a set of choppers on them. Theirs are slightly serrated.
Okay, that's kind of what I think.
And they are longer than most rear fangs. They also are set way to the rear in the jaw, which gives them tremendous pressure.
Yeah,
They
sure.
they have a bite and a half. They
I
really do.
I figure from feeding them, I don't want to find out myself. So
Yeah. The other thing is, like with most rear fangs, we don't know enough about the venom.
sure.
And there seems to be such a variety even among the same species. For instance, the so-called false water cobra, Hydrodynastes.
Mm.
Um, the people have been bitten by them, and almost always it's somebody's feeding it, and
Right.
the animal grabbed the hand rather than the food. Just a mistake, because in most instances those things don't want to bite. They're pretty easygoing animals in that respect, although they're hyperactive. People have had no effect from it. People have had a swollen limb from it, and several people have been seriously ill.
Yeah.
Seriously ill, like almost out the door. I'd love to know the reasons for that.
Sure.
Could it be that we were dealing with allergies? It might have been strange infections that they got somehow, some way when they were feeding? I don't know.
Yeah.
Great question, but we don't have any answers for any of that. When I was, I think, 15 years old, 14 years old, probably, something like that, I looked at the teeth and hognose snakes and said, my God, these guys almost have to be rear-fanged.
Yeah.
And started doing more and more poking around and looking, and my science project for high school was evidence for heterodon being venomous.
Wow.
And it turns out they are.
Yeah.
It's of no danger to human beings, but
Yeah.
they certainly have venom.
Yeah.
And it seems to affect their prey, which are the toads. It seems to have a slightly paralytic effect on the toads.
Mhm.
If nothing else, it slows them down.
Sure.
Again, why don't we know more about that? Why don't we know why possums can eat copperheads and get bitten to bits and nothing happens to them? Did you know that?
I didn't know that specifically. We did not know about why that is. I knew that they had some pretty insane immunities, but I didn't know that that was an unknown.
Yeah. Everybody's guessing about the immunes, but possums are one tough little character,
Yeah.
and they don't move very fast most of the time. Inoffensive little guys. Anybody who used to read Pogo Possum, one of my favorite characters in the comic strips. But they can take a whole lot of venom before it bothers them. And, if you start looking at some of the other mammals, some of the African critters, what I've always wondered is if the badgers in the U.S. and Europe have some immunity as well, like the honey badger does.
Yeah.
The honey badgers can take a big hit from some of the roughest of any of the solenodons, and what's the other one? Come on, you should know this by now.
You're catching me off guard 2 hours in. I'm interviewing you. You answer me.
Starts with a P. R-O. Proteroglyphs. Okay.
You lost me.
Proteroglyphs. Anyhow, why aren't we researching things like that to see if it's possible to do that with humans, where if people are working in places where there's a high density of venomous snakes, rather than killing all the snakes, maybe we can immunize the people in a way. And I'm not talking about straight immunization. There's more to it than that. Straight immunization has been done. Bill Haas did it to himself. That's not a good solution. I'm talking about something that is an understanding of how we could make the body ignore the insult from some of the venoms that are out there with the snakes. That'd be a great thing.
Yeah.
And it would save a lot of snakes' lives. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Any other folks writing in questions?
No, I think we're caught up on the questions from the chat for the moment. We're just shy of the 2-hour mark, which is kind of the
Yeah.
normal time frame we shoot for. Do you have anything else you want to bring up on the kind of nutrition topic from earlier to round out the evening, or even a closing topic aside from that?
Well, a closing topic is I wanted to apologize for everybody, or to everybody, for what happened the last time I was on. I won't go into details, but a squadron of fighter jets went over where I was, and they were on emergency mode. And the people around here, including me, lost their cell phone service for several hours, some of them for a day.
Wow.
And a lot of them lost their TV signal, all sorts of things, because they jammed everything.
Yeah.
They were hell bent on whatever they were doing or wherever they were going. And I'm about 1.5 miles from the airport. So, they hadn't even climbed much by then. They were roaring over here. The other thing I would like to say is the ideas of getting people involved in herpetology in a different way. It doesn't mean it can't be just a fun thing for you. You can have fun and still do good things for the animals. You can have fun and still learn things about the animals. It would seem to me, if you've got 5 different snakes, different species, it would be really interesting to see what the differences are among them and learn what they are, why they are, where they're from, what we know about them, what we don't know about them, and what we should know about them.
Yeah.
Let's start finding out some of the answers instead of just willy-nilly breeding stuff for prettier colors, or at least in people's mind they're prettier.
Yeah.
I, for one, can't tell you of another snake that is more beautiful than a natural ball python out of the wild, a good one, a really pretty one. They're amazing snakes, amazing looking snakes.
Yeah, they really are.
And back then they didn't used to bite either. Subject for another thing.
Yep, absolutely.
Once again, thank you to everyone who's watching, and thank you for your questions. They're great. They help bring some of this stuff to the surface, and they help engage everyone else. Don't be afraid of asking questions. The smart people are the people who are smart enough to know what they don't know. Smart enough to ask those questions so they do know, or they can open up channels for us to look at things that maybe we hadn't thought of, or maybe if we did, we didn't get as far as we should have. There's so much we don't know.
Absolutely.
There's so much we don't know. Just ask my anacondas.
Yep, without a question. Well, Terry, this was another amazing episode. Thank you so much again for your time tonight, as always. So for anyone out there who wants to support your work, support the Conservancy, where can they find the Conservancy and how can they donate?
Oh boy, do we need it. This winter has been terrible. We've got bills for heating and what have you that are just killing us.
Yeah.
You can go to our webpage, which is dragonwoodconservancy.org.
Okay.
Dragonwood Conservancy is all run together. We have a number of touchpads and things that you can donate to. We need some serious donations, and thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
We also just found out today that our insurance, and we've never had a claim, by the way, our insurance has gone up triple since last year. We have no idea how we're going to support that.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's gone up triple. It's actually more than triple when I think about it. It's like 3.3 times, 3.4 times what it was before.
Wow.
And the insurance companies are all out there, the minute you say reptile, panicking. Just like the crazy little mayor in the small town nowhere. The stuff over and over and over again is happening. People have incorrect information about these animals. How many people have been killed by big snakes in the United States? I can give you that answer, and I'll do it in another show. But almost none.
Yeah.
And the ones that have happened all have extraneous events surrounding them.
Yeah.
There's, far more people have been killed by dogs of various species, or I'm sorry, wrong word, various breeds.
Yeah.
And I'm not telling you dogs are bad. I have 2 of my own. People need to get educated about animals in general, and especially the whack-a-jobs who are out there where every time somebody puts in something for a new type of organic corn, they want to tag on, let's stop all so-called exotic animals. I want to call those non-traditional pets. It's bad. It's very bad. And it's going to lead to an isolation and a panic that will never get out from under. The animals will be all gone, all dead. Nobody will care about them. One thing that you have to understand is that nobody gives a damn about something that they can't touch, they can't feel, they can't see, and they can't experience.
Yep.
Wake up.
And more than that, you cannot care about something that you don't know exists in the first place. So it's on people like us to even bring awareness of these animals to begin with.
Correct awareness.
Yeah.
Not this panic-driven insanity by, armchair experts who don't know a thing about what they're talking about or what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're doing these animals no favor at a time when these animals are more and more at our doorstep, dying, and their areas of life, their niches, are gone over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to develop an empathy for these animals, and we need to do it really damn quick.
Yeah.
And one way of doing it, one of the many ways, but one of the way of doing it is by having animals with us. If they're appropriate as companion animals or pets or what have you, start understanding that. And as we were talking about the last time, if I can go overtime for a couple minutes.
Sure.
We have got to start doing serious work and serious study about different species developing friendships with each other. I'm going to put it, I'm not going to throw the jargon in there. I'm going to say it like most people would. The hippopotamus and the tortoise that became friends. They were obviously friends. They sought out each other's company. They played. They did all kinds of things. They developed a remarkable friendship, a remarkable awareness of each other. It happens a lot in the wild.
Yeah.
It's much less rare than people think it is. So why is that unnatural for humans? It's not. It's very natural for us. We're probably the biggest of all who should be out there and looking at some of these unusual animals, and if they're appropriate to have as pets, have them. Treat them well, learn about them, and help in their conservation. People will help if they've got them in front of them. People will understand more about the animals, will learn more about the animals. If you think that the knowledge that we've got about herpetology and the many, many, many animals encompassed, it's come from private people more than it's come from zoos.
For sure.
The people who have worked their butts off to try and learn more. So it's sort of like the Python book you were talking about. The folks who did it did a lot of hard work. Do I agree with everything that's in there? No, but it's a start and a pretty good one. And it's brought a number of things to the surface that we didn't talk about before.
Yep.
That gives it great value. Great value.
That's all we can really ask for, is just to continue that conversation, continue the learning, and not be stuck on one particular, idea as the be all end all. Be open to being wrong, be open to changing your mind. That's how this all
Absolutely. Be open to changing your mind. Be open to learning more. About 20 years ago, a county in Illinois was going to ban and euthanize anybody who, well, they weren't euthanizing the people, but they were euthanizing any of the animals involved in this. And they were banning all of the monitors. And I got called in as an expert witness in this thing. And I brought in a skull from a Rottweiler and a skull from a big water monitor. And I just held it up and I said, which one do you think is going to do more damage? The bottom line is, if you look at this and which are the teeth that are bigger, heavier duty, more powerful jaw muscle, et cetera, obviously it's the Rottweiler.
Yeah.
Do we say nobody should ever own a Rottweiler? No. What we're saying is, let's have equal treatment for animals. Let's have equal ideas that are encompassing what these animals are and the way they are. Let's be fair to them. Let's be fair to the people who own them and want to own them.
Yeah.
They're not going to take over the world.
Definitely not in Illinois. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing. If the temperature is such that they could never survive, well, then it's not going to happen as far as being feral.
Yeah.
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 Let's hear more about that from our peoples. So write in, call in, whatever you want to do. Let Stephen know what you want to hear about, what you want to learn about.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Let's have your ideas as well. What you think is the right way to do these things and what you're basing that on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not asking for guesswork. We're just asking you to tell us what you've done, what you've seen, what you've experienced.
Yep.
That's how we get knowledge out there.
That's how we all learn, is by all of us coming together and sharing experiences.
And let's start doing a lot more of it.
Yeah.
A lot more of it. And for the folks who did write their questions today, again, I thank you.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
It's a great help.
Yep.
It really is. If you're thinking about it, so are 200 other people. Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
Good
all
night.
Right. Well, thank you, Terry, again. I'm going to close out the podcast, but it was an amazing conversation again. And I am very much appreciative of all of your time.
More than happy.
All righty.
And please give us a donation. We really, really need it.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank
all right.
you.
Well, all right, guys, that was another amazing episode. Again, for the Dragonwood Conservancy, not only can you find their website, they're also on Facebook and Instagram under the Dragonwood Wildlife Conservancy. For me, you can find me on Instagram at scrubshepherd, Stephen Kush on Facebook, and then also Stephen Kush or at Kush Reptile on YouTube. I have another video coming out this Friday, and it'll be me showing you all my recent clutch of Veracruz locality tiger rat snakes that I hatched out a couple of weeks ago. The babies have all shed. They look incredible, and I'm excited to put that video out. For us here at the Trap Talk Reptile Network on YouTube, please subscribe, leave a comment, a like, share the videos that you love the most. Catch us live. There is a new podcast every single day of the week here on the channel. So if you are a fan of the reptile-related podcast content, you have come to the right place. We're on the audio platforms as well, Spotify, Apple, Buzzsprout. Subscribe and a 5-star review would be amazing on all of those platforms. With all of that said, thank you guys again for tuning in tonight, and we will catch you all back here next week for a new episode.
Shout out to US ARC and all US ARC members. If you don't know what US ARC is, don't be ashamed. Just go ahead and click the third link in the description below. See what US ARC is all about, okay? You never know when legislations are going to hit your backyard, so that's why it's very important to consider becoming a US ARC member today. These numbers really do matter, and they look at it for consideration when it comes to battling legislation. So first and foremost, thank you, Phil Goss. Thank you to anybody out there who partners up and volunteers with US ARC organization. Thank you for anyone out there who's a US ARC member. And if you can't become a US ARC member today, please talk about it on your platforms. Let your neighbors know, let all your pet stores know what US ARC is here for, and it's here to fight for our animal rights. Thank you to every US ARC member and US ARC supporter out there. True.